Chapter 1, The Unseen Menace. The small town of Willow Creek had always been a peaceful place, but that was about to change. It started with small things, a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye, a strange noise in the middle of the night, and then the disappearances began. At first, people thought it was just an isolated incident. Maybe someone had moved away, or they had taken a trip out of town. But as more and more people went missing, the town began to grow restless. One night, Sarah woke up to the sound of scratching at her window. At first, she tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a tree branch scraping against the glass. But the scratching grew louder and more persistent, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. She got out of bed and walked over to the window, pulling back the curtain to see what was causing the noise. At first, she saw nothing, but then she caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows. As she watched, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, staring back at her from the darkness. Sarah froze, unable to move or even scream. The eyes seemed to be getting closer, and she could hear a low growling sound coming from outside. Suddenly, the window shattered, and a dark shape lunged through the opening. Sarah tried to run, but it was too late. The creature was on her, its sharp teeth sinking into her flesh. The next morning, the town woke up to the news of another disappearance. This time it was Sarah, and her body was found mutilated and covered in bite marks. The town was thrown into chaos as people tried to make sense of what was happening. Some believed it was an animal, maybe a pack of wild dogs or a mountain lion. But others had a more sinister theory. They believed that something was living in the woods, something that was not of this world. As the days passed, more people went missing, and the town was gripped by fear. No one knew who or what was responsible, but they knew that it was coming for them. They could feel it watching, waiting in the shadows, ready to strike at any moment. And so, the people of Willow Creek huddled in their homes, praying that they would survive the night. They knew that they were facing an unseen menace, something that they could not see or fight. They were at the mercy of a horror that they could not even begin to understand. Chapter 2, The Hunt. The sun had set over Willow Creek, and the town was enveloped in a darkness that felt suffocating. The only sound was the distant howling of the wind through the trees, and the occasional snap of a twig breaking underfoot. The townspeople were holed up in their homes, doors locked and windows shuttered. They had learned to live in a state of constant fear, never knowing when the creature would strike next. But tonight, something was different. A group of hunters had come to town, led by a man named Hank. He was a rugged and experienced tracker, with a reputation for taking down even the most dangerous game. The people of Willow Creek had heard of him before, but they had never thought they would need his help. But now, they were desperate, and they were willing to try anything to stop the creature that had been terrorizing their town. Hank had agreed to help, but he warned them that it would not be an easy task. As they set out into the woods, the hunters' footsteps crunching against the fallen leaves, the air was thick with tension. They were armed with rifles, knives, and anything else they could get their hands on. They moved silently, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. As they moved deeper into the woods, the trees grew thicker, and the underbrush became more dense. The hunters had to move slowly, trying not to make too much noise, but every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made them jump. The hours passed, and the hunters grew more and more exhausted. They had seen no sign of the creature, and Hank was beginning to doubt whether they would find anything at all. But then, they heard a low growling sound, and they froze. The sound was coming from up ahead, and they could see a dark shape moving in the shadows. Hank signaled for the others to spread out, and they advanced slowly, guns at the ready. As they got closer, the shape became clearer, and the hunters could see that it was a large, black animal. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and its teeth were bared in a vicious snarl. The hunters raised their guns, taking aim at the creature. But before they could shoot, it disappeared into the trees, and the hunters were left standing there, hearts pounding with fear. They had come so close, but the creature had slipped away. As they made their way back to town, the hunters were filled with a sense of dread. They had seen the creature with their own eyes, and they knew that it was more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The hunt had just begun, and they were not sure if they were ready to face the horror that awaited them. Chapter 3: The Trap. The town of Willow Creek was on edge after the failed hunt. The townspeople knew that they could not live in fear forever, and they needed a solution to stop the creature once and for all. Hank, the leader of the hunters, called a meeting at the town hall. He had a plan, and he needed the help of the whole town to make it work. "We need to set a trap," Hank announced to the assembled crowd. "We know the creature is out there, and we need to use that to our advantage." The plan was simple. They would lure the creature into a clearing in the woods, using a live animal as bait. Once it was in the open, the hunters would be able to get a clear shot at it. It was risky, but it was their best chance of stopping the creature before it could do any more harm. The townspeople were hesitant, but they knew that they had to do something. They rallied together, preparing the trap with a mix of fear and determination. They set up a large cage, with a goat as bait, and waited for the creature to take the bait. The night was long and tense, and the hunters took shifts watching over the trap. The creature was nowhere to be seen, but they knew it was out there, watching and waiting. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the hunters spotted movement in the woods. The creature was there, creeping closer to the trap. They could see its glowing red eyes, and the hairs on the back of their necks stood on end. The creature approached the cage, sniffing at the air, and then pounced on the goat. It was a moment of chaos, and the hunters rushed to take their shot. The gunfire was deafening, and the creature let out a blood-curdling scream as it was hit. It stumbled back, dazed and wounded, and the hunters closed in for the kill. It was a brutal fight, with the creature lashing out with its razor-sharp claws and teeth. But in the end, the hunters prevailed. The creature lay still on the ground, its glowing eyes fading away into darkness. The town was safe, for now. But the memory of the creature would haunt them for years to come. They had faced a horror beyond their imagination, and had come out the other side. But they knew that there was always the possibility of something lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. And they would never forget the night that they had faced the unseen menace, and won. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. The town of Willow Creek was finally at peace. The creature that had terrorized them for so long was dead, and the townspeople could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But the aftermath of the hunt was just as unsettling as the hunt itself. The townspeople were on edge, and the once close community had become distant and wary. They had seen things that they could not explain, and they were left with questions that they could not answer. Hank, the leader of the hunters, tried to reassure the townspeople. "We did what we had to do," he said. "We protected our town from a threat that we didn't understand. It wasn't easy, but we did it together." But the townspeople were not so easily reassured. They had seen things that they could not explain, and they were left with a sense of unease that would not go away. There were rumors of strange sightings in the woods, of shadows moving in the darkness. Some said that the creature had not been acting alone, that there were others out there, waiting for their chance to strike. The townspeople tried to go back to their normal lives, but they knew that things would never be the same. They were haunted by the memory of the creature, and the knowledge that there were things out there that they could not understand. As time passed, the town slowly began to heal. The hunters left, and the town returned to its quiet way of life. But the memory of the creature would always be there, lurking in the back of their minds. The town of Willow Creek had faced a horror beyond their imagination, and they had won. But the scars of the hunt would stay with them forever. They had learned that there were things in this world that they could not explain, and that sometimes, the only way to survive was to face their fears head-on.